I had been married to my wife Rachel for 5 years in the beginning. Our love story was nothing short of fairy tale, so much so that I proposed to her just 6 months after we first met. Our wedding took place in Greece. It was breathtakingly beautiful. Overflowing with romance about a month ago, my long wait of vacation finally began, and I was determined not to waste a single moment. We booked tickets to Turkey for a 10-day getaway. The first 3 days in Istanbul were incredible. We explored various historical landmarks, took leisurely walks along the waterfront, relaxed in charming little cafes, and dined at fantastic restaurants. Everything seemed absolutely perfect, as if nothing could possibly go wrong. On the 4th day, Rachel decided she wanted to visit a nightclub dance, have some drinks, and just enjoy herself initially. I was on board with the idea, but as the evening approached, I was hit with a split headache. I felt so miserable that even the thought of stepping out of our hotel room seemed unbearable. Meanwhile, Rachel was already dressed in press, wearing a light summery dress with her hair and makeup flawlessly done. She looked stunning and was clearly eager to party. Deep down, I hoped she'd change her mind and stay with me, but that didn't happen. She reassured me that she would only have a couple cocktails, dan a little, and return by 11 p.m. We agreed to stay in touch throughout the night so that if anything went wrong, I could come pick her up. She left at 7:10 p.m. By 7:30, she texted me saying everything was fine and that she was at the bar Enjoy Mojo at 8:40. We checked in again. She mentioned she was on the dance floor finishing her second drink and still feeling great. Another 40 minutes passed, and I messaged her again this time. There was no reply. My text remained unread. I tried calling her, no answer after waiting another 40 minutes and still receiving no response. A sinking feeling settled in my gut. Despite my pounding headache, I forced myself up and headed out to find her. She was my wife, and I was worried sick. When I arrived at the club, she was nowhere to be found. I went over to the bar and approached the bartender, who, as it turned out, was also from the States and had been working there for a few years. I showed him his picture on my phone and asked if he had seen her. He gave me a knowing smirk and said she had left with a group of local party guys, regulars known for seeking easy flames. My stomach twisted in knots. I discreetly slipped him $50 and he scribbled down an address. 15 minutes later, I arrived at a high-end apartment complex in an upscale neighborhood. The group was on the 2nd floor. I climbed the steps and hesitated before knocking, listening closely. That's when I heard a woman's voice. There was no mistaking the intimacy in her tone. My heart sank straight to the floor. Somehow I gathered the courage to knock. Moments later, the door opened, and a guy stood there, wrapped in nothing but a white bedsheet. Something inside me snapped without thinking. I punched him square in the jaw and stormed into the apartment. Another guy was sprawled across the couch, and straddling him like something out an adult film was my wife Rachel. Everything after that was a blur. I vaguely remember shouting something along the lines of "You disgusting," before turning and bolting out of there. When I got back to the hotel, I frantically packed my bags and searched for the earliest flight home. About 40 minutes later, Rachel returned, her face soaked in tears. She collapsed to her knees, sobbing, and begged for forgiveness. I was furious. In the heat of the moment, I slapped her across the face, a decision I deeply regret now, but there's no UND doing it. That same night, I flew back home. The next morning, I headed straight to the courthouse, or rather the county clerk's office, to file for divorce. Rachel returned a day later and has been bombarding me with calls ever since, crying and pleading for a second chance. A month has passed. My heart still aches, but I'm slowly piecing myself back together. I sent all her belongings to her mother's house and changed the locks these days. I throw myself into work, try and keep my mind occupied and not dwell on betrayal. I'm grateful for my best friend. He has been my rock through all of this. Honestly, I'm just counting down the days until the divorce is finalized so I can finally be free of this nightmare.